Hi everyone, welcome to our Claris FileMaker training course on how to build a custom CRM in 30 days. This training is designed primarily for beginners or those of you who need kind of a refresher with the Claris FileMaker platform. Over the course of 30 days, we're going to spend about an hour each day covering topics from the very basics of the Claris FileMaker platform in terms of the tools, the products, deployment, security, all those things you need to know about as you build a custom application. So keep in mind that towards the beginning of the training, the topics are more basic in nature. And as we get towards the end of the training, they're somewhat more advanced, I would say probably intermediate level topics. Now keep in mind the special part of this training is that while we're not only talking about the FileMaker platform, we're talking how you can rapidly customize an existing free CRM that you can download today. It's unlocked. So taking that CRM and customizing it to your organization's particular needs. Now, a couple important links to keep in mind. One is that if you need a copy of FM Starting Point, the free unlocked CRM, visit fmstartingpoint.com and press the button. And then our system will shoot you an email with the current links to that CRM. If you're looking for additional FileMaker training, visit fmtraining.tv and press the bundles button. And that will allow you to get more of this highly animated and somewhat energetic training material to help you through the learning process with the Claris FileMaker platform. Lastly, if you have questions about the FileMaker platform or you're looking for some additional help, maybe some one-on-one coaching help, feel free to email us at support@rcconsulting.com.
My name is Margaret. Hello. I will be your broadcast engineer for today. And also general lady that talks and chats things over to the engineer while they're doing things. Richard is currently out at the moment. He will be back tomorrow and for the rest of the weekend and basically until this 30-day CRM stuff is over. With that being said, and my long opening spiel is kind of over, I'm going to introduce our engineer for today, who is Jonathan Hogel. He has been a senior engineer at RCC for several years now, I think. How many? Almost a decade, John? I feel like it's been quite a while.
Just short of 10.
Yeah, I was about to say, it should be really close to 10. So I'm going to stop sharing and John is going to share his screen. Okay, so John, I think for our talk today, we are discussing hiding objects and then we're going to do deduplication. So whenever you get duplicate data in your database.
Okay, so the first thing that we want to talk about today was hiding objects. And hiding objects in FileMaker is something that it's relatively simple, but it's something that can be a really powerful tool if you know how to use it in the correct way. It's a little bit confusing in terms of it's kind of written backwards. So a lot of times when people are saying, I want this to show up at a certain time, the way that they think about it is, when do I want this to show up and how do I write code that makes it do that? However, with FileMaker, it works in the opposite direction. Instead of saying show this in a specific case, it is don't show this in every case except for the one that I wanted to actually show up for. So for instance, we have this this button here in FileMaker, and what this does is this is in our starting point CRM, and what it does is it allows you to insert a picture into a contact photo spot. So let me show you what that looks like here. So I click on this little trash can, you see it goes away, and now I have this button over here, the trash can is gone. I'll click on this, it'll bring up my dialog, I'll click on the picture, puts it back in, and now it's refreshed, that one's gone, and we have the trash can again. Now, how did we do that? Well, we took care of it with hides. So if you look here at this, you can see that it says hide object when, and I'll make this bigger. And it says hide it when not is empty, the container photo, or get window mode 1. So what this means is that I want this insert button to go away unless this photo is empty. So not being, this isn't the case, and then is empty. Because again, we're doing it backwards. So we're saying, instead of saying show up when this is empty, we're saying only show up if there's nothing here, if that makes sense. It's sort of a reverse type of thinking on the way that you have to program this. So what we're looking at is we're saying if there's no photo here, then do not hide. If there is a photo, then hide. And get window mode 1, this here is just if you're in find mode. That's all this means. So this button will show up, to be clear, it will show up if this is empty, or if that's it. That's the only time it'll show up. And so you have to write it, like I said, in a backwards sort of fashion, where we say hide when there's something there, as opposed to show up when it's empty. I know I'm kind of repeating the same thing a lot. I'm trying to find the best way to explain it.
No, it's kind of a weird concept. It's basically doing double negatives. So
yeah,
which
you're
always
trying
get
to
weird.
Cancel yourself out there.
Yes.
So just like this trash can icon, you'll see that it's the same thing. It's gonna hide if it's empty, so it'll show up as long as there's something in here. So again, we wrote it to say if there's nothing in there, then hide, because you write it in the reverse order. What you're trying to do is determine not when it should show up, but when it shouldn't, if that makes any sense.
No, people can ask questions, of course, but basically it seems like that you're just saying that. Oh, my train of thought died. Never mind. I'm just gonna be quiet now. But yeah, no. The idea is that you're working with negative. You're writing you're writing it to hide in certain situations, and not, especially David Angel's like it gets complicated when using or and, which is true. What would you use an or and for, like in certain situations?
Well, for example, in this button that we were using, we have an or in there.
Yes.
Right here where it says or, and then get window mode equals 1. Because there are 2 situations where we don't want this to show up. We don't want it to show up if there's already something in here, and we also don't want it to show up if we're in find mode. So this or here says also add this. Another thing about finds that I didn't fully explain is that you're looking for a 1 or a 0. So it's like you're writing an if statement. It's either true or it's not true. In the case of a hide statement, if it's a 1, it doesn't show up. And if it's a 0, it does show up. But you can see here, if I go into find mode, we're missing that one. This one did it anyway. That might be a bug. It needs to
be in find mode. Could you search by pictures in find mode? Is that an option?
No. Oh, that's because nobody checked this little box that said apply in find mode. It's very important. Here's a live lesson about why that's important. This apply in find mode needs to be turned on. By default, finds only work in browse mode. And if you want it to also work in find mode, that checkbox needs to be turned on. But now, if I go into find mode, you'll see it's gone. We go back to browse mode. Everything's back. You can see it again. But again, only if that is empty.
Is there another way to handle hide?
I would need a little bit more of a definition of that. When you say handle hide, do you mean is there another way to make something disappear under certain conditions? Or are you saying is there a better... There are a few different ways, but most of them are kind of hacks. FileMaker in general typically uses the hide to take care of it. I've seen a few different things for things like button bars and panels and things that don't hide super well in FileMaker. I've seen people use different things like, I've seen people use things like putting a blank rectangle over something and having it disappear in certain conditions, but it's more or less the same principle, just applied at a different time. There is technically one other way to do it, and that is what's called conditional formatting. That's not really what we're talking about today, but for instance, we have conditional formatting here on this company field. If it'll let me get into it. There we go. So we have a whole formula here that says to turn blue if this is the case. If you wanted to, you could tell it to blend into the background or turn white if this was the case, and then it would disappear. I mean, I could show you that if we just said turn white. I said, okay. See, it's still there, but you can't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But for things like buttons, it's not great because a user could still interact with it, even if they can't see it, which tends to cause people to make mistakes that they don't know that they're making. Yeah, if you want it to truly disappear, then yes, it is stuck being awkwardly phrased in terms of you're kind of writing it in a backward style. A couple of things that I've used this for that even RCC uses it for are things like this we talked about, where a button is going to show up or not show up under certain conditions. We have the same thing here in the email. So if there's no email address in this field, that little envelope will go away, or at least it should. And then if we put one in there, it comes back. Things along those lines, just to sort of visually help people who are using the software understand when they can and can't do certain actions, is mostly what I've used it for. I've also seen it used for people who wanted like new buttons to be on the bottom of portals. I've seen people use hides for that. But again, that's sort of very, very user specific in terms of when you want to apply them. But they can be a very useful tool, very powerful, allow you to really direct your users into doing very specific actions or not doing specific actions in cases where giving them that ability would cause a major problem somewhere in the database.
Make a really quick button that hides under certain conditions real fast, John, just like
yeah,
scratch.
Sure.
So that way we can talk through the logic.
So we're just going to make an easy button here. It's going to go in a place that it shouldn't, but that's because it doesn't matter. So it's just going to be a button to, you know what, let's do a phone call. Let's say that we want to, we have a VoIP system hooked up to this and we want to be able to make a call out of FileMaker, but we only want to be able to do it if there's a phone number for us to call. So I'd put a little phone icon here, and I'd move it down here, and I'd put it here by their phone. And so then what I would do, will you let me adjust the size of this without ungrouping? Probably not. So what I'd do is I'd put that button there, like I said, and I would put a hide on it. And I would say, when should I hide? Well, I think that you should hide if there is no phone number.
That makes sense. You don't want to attempt to call out an empty field.
All right, so I say to hide if there is no phone number. So if that field is empty, this button shouldn't show up. And if I save that, you'll see there's a phone number. It shows up. If I get rid of this, it disappears. And comes back. That's more or less the principle there. It's just, you just have to think about it instead of when do I want people to be able to do this? I have to think about when do I not want people to be able to do this.
David Angel, can you show how to hide when a row is selected in a portal? I don't totally understand the question myself. So can you explain that real quick for me, John, what he's asking?
You said to show how to hide when a row is active, right?
Yeah, when active in a portal.
Yeah.
So that would be like what, hiding the row? Or no, not available while the row is active?
It'd be, I think, more along the lines of, for instance, I'm just gonna do it with this button because I already made it.
Yep.
But it is actually fairly straightforward. You would say hide object when it would probably work similar to the way that we have the blue here that shows up when it's active, right? And this is done like this. But we do it here with IDs. So the way that it works here is we have a script that runs. So when you click on this portal row here, it actually runs a script that says view no. And to do that, we set this field here, this ID current note, to equal the ID of the portal row. And if we wanted to apply that logic, we would do the same thing here, which would be to say if the ID current note is equal to ID note. So you can see it down here. You can't see it on this one. If this one became active, you couldn't see it, and you can see it up there.
Okay.
Shouldn't have changed it to white, but so that's one way of doing it. You can also set variables for active portal row numbers, and have like a count going somewhere in the portal that says that, you know, this is record number, whatever. There's a couple other ways to do it. They're sort of unreliable, I would think, because it doesn't account for sort order in that particular case, and you can sort of mess yourself up. You know, really to show this, I know that you guys have seen it like 4 times now, but it would make more sense if I changed this to be like a color you could see on both of them, like a black. So you can see here that it's not on this one, and it will switch if that becomes the active. So that's how you would hide something here, specifically if it's the active record.
For David Angel mentions for hiding portal, active portal or stuff in active portals he uses is empty ID. So
that would work if, correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that would only work if your goal is to do that for empty portal rows where there's no actual data there. Because I think if you did it just by if the ID for the portal field would be empty, it would only show up on that one blank one that shows up if you turn on that option that allows you to create records through the relationship. So to demonstrate deduplicating records, I'm going to actually use this database, and I'm going to put it all the way up here so it's hard for me to use and make it hard to see too. All right. It's really big, but that's finished goods for you. Okay, so deduplicating records. Now, before we talk about deduplicating records, it's really important to understand what, how to find them. You know, if I a big problem that I have people that come to me and they'll say, you know, we've been using our database for 8 years and we just make a new record anytime somebody calls in. So we have, you know, 175,000 contact records and maybe 65,000 of them are unique. And so you're like, okay, well, we can probably fix that, but first we have to decide a few things. And the first thing that we have to decide is, what do I consider a duplicate record? To determine that, it's going to be different for everybody. But if, for instance, for us, for finished goods, what we consider a duplicate record is 2 records that have the same email address. So this is my email. You can see this one has it, and this one over here also has my email. So we would say, okay, well, that's a problem because this is how we send out our newsletters and campaigns and things like that. And we don't want to bombard somebody with, you know, 37 emails a day because they've, you know, signed up in more than one way because they've downloaded our training or FM Starting Point or things like that. So we put together a system that would allow us to prevent that from happening. So that's how we personally define duplicate records. It might be different from you. You might do it on phone numbers. I would suggest trying not to do it on name alone, just because it's, you know, my name is Jonathan. I have met dozens of Jonathans in my life.
Many, many Jonathans.
So I've worked at a time at RCC's all-time high with we had 30 employees and 5 of them were named John or some variation.
We had to begin numbering them, unfortunately.
So
Richard couldn't keep track.
I mean, it just you can run into trouble fast if you do something like that. Well, it's unlikely that you'll have somebody with the same first name and last name. That doesn't make it impossible, and it can be dangerous to define a duplicate and get rid of somebody's data entirely based solely on their name. So
I have a friend named Chris Smith. You want to take a bet how many Chris Smiths there are in the world? There's a lot.
I bet there is. Yeah. So that is sort of the way, the first step in deduplicating a record. There's a few also different ways of finding duplicate records. FileMaker does have a built-in system, and I have found that it works moderately well. And what they do is they put in an exclamation point. They say if you put an exclamation point in a field and do a find, you'll find anybody where that works. There's a couple of problems with this, in my opinion, and that is that they're not in any order. So if you've made them, across several years or whatever, so you can say, for instance, it says that, this one here has been used in several different places, but as we go through, we're not seeing it as the next one anywhere. So if you're going to do that, I would recommend also doing a sort based on whatever field you use as your duplicate. Stop doing that. For this particular case, that's not that, it is this field, and we sort it. So now you can see here's another one with the same email, and it works, like I said, okay. It's not amazing. I have seen it personally fail many times, but I have also seen it succeed, as you can see, where it just did that. So that's FileMaker's sort of built-in way of doing it. However, a lot of people tend to have multiple things that they are searching for in terms of what makes a duplicate. For instance, I just talked about using names and your first name, last name. Some people will say, okay, well, if I do first name, last name, and address, I should be safe. But then you can't just use an exclamation point because it's not going to be the same, and you're going to be stuck manually sorting through a bunch of records. So once you've done that and you've decided whatever you want to use to determine quote unquote uniqueness of a record, saying, this is the one that is, this is what I want to find duplicates based off of. You need a way to deal with that. So FileMaker, again, says have some sort of key. You guys have talked about it before. I'm sure we use ID fields here because they're fields that we know are unique. And that is the important part when it comes to deduplicating records, is you need to know which one is which. And in order to do that, you have to have something that is unique for every record. Some people use UUIDs. Some people combine a bunch of fields together. Some people just use generic, counting IDs and serial numbers, whatever you want to do, as long as you have a unique ID. That's what's important.
One in enter mode, would it not be ideal to have a warning, this record already exists?
You could do it. It would be difficult, I would say. You'd have to use field validation, and that does exist, I believe, in this specific term. So if I go in here, this is a mess, don't look at it, pretend you didn't see anything.
Making it larger.
No, you can see the fields. The layout's what was a mess. So there is, I believe, in field validation. Here we have validation. You can demand it be a unique value, which is in here somewhere, I believe. Yeah, unique value right here, this checkbox. And you can say this has to be unique in order for you to create a record, which just means it can't be the same thing as anything else. And that could work for preventing duplicates. This is more for what do I do if I have them and I need to get rid of them, than it is to prevent it. But yes, that is a way that you could prevent duplicates there with field level validation. It does add overhead to the system, and it can potentially cause a slowdown in the long run, but it's not necessarily something that's going to be an immediate effect that's going to really cause you a lot of pain. Any other questions so far?
No, I think you're good to continue for the moment.
Okay, so once we've done those first two steps of first identifying what we consider to be duplicate data and identifying what we have as a unique key, I'm going to click on this deduplicate records here. We get taken to this screen. This is obviously, a custom screen that we have made. When we deduplicate records, here at RCC, we don't want to just get rid of one of them. We want to combine the two because there's a possibility that, for instance, one of them has an invoice that the other doesn't, like this. I have an invoice here. I don't have that invoice up here. But, I have some information that I want to keep up here. Like this is a real phone number. This doesn't look like it's a real phone number. All that kind of stuff. So you can kind of decide, okay, well, which one do I want to keep and which one do I want to merge? So we have a system here in check for doing just that. And I can show you how it works here. So if I hit this keep button, say it calls a script here. And so it sets a variable. The first one it sets here is the deduplicate process record to keep. This is a global variable. I don't know if you guys have covered variables and global variables versus non-global variables, but what that means is that when I set this, FileMaker is going to remember this, even if I go to a different script. So I'm going to do that. It's going to get set, and then it's going to say if it is the same as the one to merge. So you see up here, this is the deduplicate record to keep. This is the record to merge. And we say, if I decided that I wanted to keep the one that I had originally decided to merge, go ahead and clear that value out. So since it hasn't been set yet, that doesn't apply. And then you go down and it'll refresh both our objects and commit the record. The refresh is just to get the color change to show up. So now I would go down here and I would say I want to merge this one. So it's going to do basically the same script, just backwards. So you can see now I'm setting this record to merge. And then I'm doing a check here to say, is this the same as the record I've selected to keep? It's not. So we'll refresh and commit. So you see those two are selected. And then if I changed it and I said, actually, this is the one I want to keep, it'll run through and it will get rid of that value from up here and also get rid of the merge value that I had set down here. So that is the way that we do it. We do it through global variables. I've seen people do it through global fields. You can do it really either way if you want to. There's not a major benefit of doing one over the other than if you use variables, it doesn't take up a field spot in your table. So that's our keep and merge. We also have an option to say, now that we've looked at this list, we've decided that one of these isn't a duplicate, and we can click not a duplicate and it would remove it from the list. All right, so I'm going to hit this process the deduplication now button here. So it's going to run this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we've selected what records we want to keep and which ones we want to merge. And if either of those are empty, we're going to stop the script and say, hey, there's a problem here. After we do that, we are going to write a log entry, which is just our whole audit that we have here. I'm just going to have it skip through doing that. And then we're going to start our merge. So these records here, I can step down into this and I'll walk you through what's happening. So we have our window here. It's going to go ahead and make a new window. It made it way off screen, which is really nice for a demonstration. And what it's going to do is it's going to go in there and it's going to do a find, and it's going to find the record that I want to keep. And the reason it's doing that is because we need to isolate it. So it is the one that we by default have set, and we know that it's not going to be involved in the rest of what the script does. So it goes and does that. Then we have a check here, and this check is pretty straightforward. 401, it means that something went wrong with the find. It couldn't find the record. And if there's a problem there, you have a bigger problem in your database and you need to call somebody to help you with it. Then we set our website and we move from there. Why are we setting a website? So we set the website field here to be itself, and the reason we do that, I just asked myself and then realized, is to make sure that we have the ability to edit this record. Because if it's record locked, you don't want to try this because you'll end up thinking that you're setting data that's not actually getting set. So that is what this is for. That is to make sure that nobody is modifying it or we're not modifying it ourselves somewhere else. So then we're going to make another new window and we're going to find our merge. And again, we have that check to see if the find worked, which it did. And we have the same check for making sure we're not modifying it. And then we're going to start going through all of our related data. So the first thing we do is notes to move. So it's going to go into the notes module. It's going to go in there. It's going to do a find based on our ID here, which ID contact. Will this let me? No, not while the script is running. I'd like you guys to be able to see this. So yeah. I'm going to
stop it and then move the window on. You could go.
I can continue to walk you guys through the script. We're not going to have enough time for me to manually edit it to make it so that it's going to be visible on screen. Is there? Yeah, it's just that it's not going to work that way. I don't have enough time to go through it all and edit it that way. Since you can't see it anyway, I'm just going to walk you through it this way, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
I could. It's not a matter of the screens. The script itself is setting this window to negative 9,999.
Yeah,
it's specifically built to be off screen because flashing windows don't look nice. And so we built it that way so that people didn't have to see it, because we didn't design our database with presentations in mind at the time that we were making it.
Oh, yeah. It isn't even showing on. Yeah, Martin, unfortunately, if he showed both screens, there would be nothing because it's thrown into the void.
It is way out there.
Yeah.
So
where were we?
The process here is pretty straightforward. We go in, we go to the notes field, we go to notes data entry, and we're going to find ID contact on that merge record, the second one that we selected. And then we're going to do a find, and if there are none, that's fine. If they do exist, then we're going to go ahead and move all of the records over to the other one by performing a replace, which happens here, which I don't know why it's in a second script, but it is. So you can see here, though, this is the contact we're doing with the merge. If it doesn't find anything, it does nothing. If it does, it runs this replace command. What replace does is it sets ID contact in the notes field, and we're going to set them all to be the same ID as the record to keep. And we're going to continue to do that basically through everything else. So we start with invoices. We do the same thing, and then we move to this again is our video player licenses. Then we find no invoices, and then we do subscriptions, which again has to do with our video players. We transfer all of those. There's our video player licenses, and it's we do a find and replace. So I will show you that. So I have this one as keep. I have this one as merge. If I run this process, you can see that it's taking a second. What it's doing here is updating the notes field, and I know that because it's the only one that's going to be big enough for it to actually give us a dialog. Okay, so we see that it's finished. We say okay. If I say quit process, it'll do that, and I have to take it to here. But you can see we now only have one record, but we got our additional information here. We got our new phone number merged together. We got our invoice that came across, and all that information all merged together to be one single record in our database instead of two separate ones.
For stuff on the merge stuff, does it make a new record and then delete the old record and attach the new record to the keep contact, or does it just change the ID of what that record?
It manually changes the ID.
Got it.
It uses a replace to change the ID from the old the record we selected to merge. Instead of being that ID, it's now the ID of the record we decided to keep.
Got it. Okay, so it doesn't make new records for the merge stuff. It just changes the ID of the old records to the new ID that was designated as the keep ID. Got it.
Right. No new records are created. The old one, the one that we have merged, does get deleted at the end. So now I only have one instead of two.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yes, people, let us know if that is making sense or if that's confusing. Question from Ken. Does the deduplication process only run on one set of duplications? In other words, 5 different set of duplications, does it loop through them?
So it's currently set to do one person at a time. However, getting it to loop through if they had 4 records or 5 records or 6 records isn't that big of a stretch. But it is currently person at a time. So if you had a Jonathan, and then you had a Margaret, and you had a Richard, and you were trying to go through all 3 of them, and you ran this process, it would go through them one at a time. I believe we actually have it set up to run automated here, and it does it in a loop, but it still does it one person at a time. It finds the first one, then it goes through the whole process, then it goes on to the next one, which will be a different person now because we got rid of the duplicates, and then it'll continue and loop through and do it that way as a way to get rid of multiple sets of duplicated records. When you say when you copy and paste, are you talking about when you copy and paste in general, like if I just clicked in this field and copied and pasted, or are you copying in like the create new field dialog box, or are you talking about where are you doing the copying and pasting? For those who are wondering, when he copies and pastes, he's getting a full line. It's giving him his TO, his table occurrence, as well as the field name and the value in the field. And so to help define why that might be happening, I need a little bit more information.
Wally said he had that in hide.
In hide, okay. Typically that will show up if you are using a specific field. that you're referencing, like I was doing with the phone field. And then I moved to a different table, like accounts, and tried to paste the same value in there. It would give me that as a readout that says, this doesn't quite work out right because it's not the same spot, same table occurrence, if that makes sense there, Wally. I wish I could display the question. I suppose I could open Slack and show you guys what it was, but
yeah, that's our conversation. I don't think there's any sensitive information. So.
Yeah, so what he's talking about is he's getting this. If he goes in here and he's copying and pasting his hide, you see he gets this TO5 contacts container photo. I shouldn't do it with that one though, because it is a field. So he's getting something like this when he copies and pastes this, and it equals a specific value. So if I wanted to hide the zip code, if it equaled 95054 or something, like, and he copies and pastes it, he's getting a value with quotes and backslashes, and it just has to do with FileMaker basically not recognizing where he's at. So if he took this and he tried to move it somewhere else, it wouldn't work because that field doesn't exist there. As far as I know, that is what he is saying.
Okay, hopefully that helps you out, Wally. That is basically just a context issue by the sounds of it then.
Yeah.
He said it's in the same layout.
Same layout. Is the issue the slashes that are in it? Or is the issue, because so he's getting something that looks like this, where he has quote / quote value and then quote / quote, which for FileMaker, for those of you who are unaware, this symbol is what they use to comment something out. And hey, Wally, if you have quotes, so if yours looks like this when you copy it, and then you paste it somewhere in FileMaker, it will automatically insert those because what it's doing is commenting out your quotation marks. But when you're doing a find, you don't need the whole thing in quotes, just or when you're doing a hide, I mean, you only need the value. So it looked like this is how it should be. Not with the outer quotes here on the outside of the accounts and the whole thing. If that helps.
So with that being said, thank you very much, everyone. I will be seeing you here tomorrow.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, John.
You were a great audience. You had rapt attention the whole time. I couldn't see your faces, but I believe that you were thoroughly enjoying every second of it, and I appreciate you guys attending.
Have a good day, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.